40 years ago, in 1981, I went on a 25-day hunger strike. Do you want to know why? I'm Reverend Dr. Brent Hawks. I was the senior pastor for 40 years, and now I'm the executive director of Rainbow Faith and Freedom. Part of being a senior pastor of a church that had a special ministry to the gay lesbian community, not exclusive, there were lots of heterosexual people involved in the church as well. But part of that ministry was being a spiritual leader of a church, pretty obvious, but also being a human rights activist, specifically an LGBTI activist. The bathhouses are important institutions in the gay male community, sometimes in the lesbian community as well, but mostly the gay male community. And they're places where men meet other men, predominantly for sexual activity. That's a safe place where they're not going to be harassed or beaten up. And the problem in those days was that the police were constantly harassing our community in terms of arresting people, in terms of raiding our institutions. And to give you an example, there was a man named Don, a man I knew, who used to invite people back to his home for sexual activity. And he would advertise in the gay magazines, for the hookups. And the police raided his home and charged him with having sexual activity with someone of the same sex in the privacy of his own home. So on February the 5th, 1981, the police raided a number of the baths in Toronto and arrested over 300 gay men. And they did a lot of damage. They didn't just walk in and charge an owner and charge one of the people in the bathhouse. They arrested everybody, put them in the paddy wagons. It was an awful, awful situation. They destroyed some of the facilities, the pictures of them breaking down walls, doors, etc. And in one of the baths, Richmond Street bath, they lined up the gay men, a bunch of them, in the shower area. And one of the police officers said, "I wish those showers were hooked up to gas instead of water." And one of the young men that night, his parents had survived the Holocaust. So this was pretty horrifying. And so after the arrest, everyone seemed to know somebody that had been arrested. The community was really angry, and so there began to be a lot of protests. And they grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and a lot more violence from the police to the community, and the community were getting really angry as well. And so it was escalating, and I was very, very concerned. I'll give you an example. One of the demonstration, and we were standing there, and the police were clearing the streets, and an elderly man fell down, and the police were kicking him. So I jumped in and pulled him out, and 2 police officers held me while a third one beat me. In other situations, there were some gay guys trying to roll over a police car, and I helped to calm that down. So I was very concerned about the increasing violence, so I felt led to go on a hunger strike to demand an investigation of the police. One newspaper said, "Let him starve." In those days, in these kinds of situations where people were arrested in bathhouses or in other situations, their names would be published in the newspapers. And often people would be fired from their jobs, or they would be kicked out of their families, or worse yet, commit suicide. So the province refused to investigate, and so City Council met and debated various motions to end the fast, and finally passed a motion to have a city investigation. And so my fast ended. And they hired a human rights writer who wrote for the Globe and Mail, reporter. His name was Arnold Bruner. And Arnold interviewed the police. He interviewed a number of leaders in the LGBT community, including myself, and a number of politicians. And he produced the Bruner Report. And it was an amazing report because it challenged the police in many areas. It said that the police needed to recognize the gay community as a legitimate part of the city, that they needed to establish a liaison and an outreach to the community. They needed to educate the police so that they would be able to handle the interactions with the gay community more properly. So it took us about 25 years to be able to get all those changes implemented. And however, sadly, most of those changes benefited mainly the white gay community. And many of the other marginalized gay communities, people of color in particular, or trans people, really did not feel the kind of change in attitude of the police, and I'm still really sad about that. But I want to give you an example of how things did change. So there's a young man, I got a lot of coverage for doing the first gay marriages, so there's a young man who was going to get married to his girlfriend. And he went to his dad and he said, I want to get married, but I don't know anyone to do the wedding. And his dad said, Brent, you've been to Brent's church with me. Ask Brent to do your wedding. And that dad was the chief of police, Bill Blair. So 25 years before that, I was beaten by the police at the demonstration after these awful raids. And now the chief of police was recommending to his son that I marry him and his girlfriend. So things can change, but those changes take a lot of work over a long haul. And we need to do a better job to make sure that everyone feels the change and that other marginalized communities are not left behind. So that was 40 years ago. If you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends. I hope you can subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell and you can get a notice when we post a new video. Thank you.